I actually have the pleasure of knowing these both players really well, both hailing from the UK. Luke Kirkham, as you mentioned there, bringing the Palkia V-Star, but also has a little bit of a spice in his deck. Luke is the type of player who likes to bring a bit of a different edge to the competition, playing that Ice Rider Calyrex with the Palkia V-Star. But here we see Luke Doran, of course, as you mentioned, bringing Iron Valiant with the Entei, tried and tested. And there we see some of the accomplishments. EUIC top 64, no easy feat for him. But yeah, I'm just so curious as to how this one plays out.
Yeah, you might think in your head straight away, you know, fire types against water types tends to go in favor of water. And I don't think that's the real factor here. I think a lot of it comes down to who starts that prize race first, who can get the first 2 prize knockout. And then of course we know with the Entei Valiant you've got the Charizard at the end, but there's Luke Kirkham on the other side, has been playing for a long time. Very experienced player, and as you mentioned, loves to have those interesting deck choices. And with Palkia V-Star alongside that Ice Rider Calyrex, we all thought it was gone. It'd been done. Wasn't good enough, but it's come out here today as a great answer into that Miraidon matchup, which has been so prevalent in the hall here at Gdańsk.
Yeah, as I said earlier, Luke likes to put his finger on the pulse of the meta, and here we see both players starting up. Luke Kirkham, of course, looking for one of those explosive starts here with the Palkia V-Star.
I mean, both sides want the explosive start.
Yeah,
you know.
of course, yeah, both players do want it, but of course with the power of that star portal on the Palkia V-Star, it's going to be looking to utilize that as best as possible, keep the efficiency up and running, and here we see the prizes coming down. Nothing too detrimental to both players.
I mean, the Ice Rider Calyrex, it is just a 1-1 line, so prizing the basic there will limit the ability to get that out, and maybe that's useful in the matchup to have a big 3-prize Pokemon against Entei. But realistically, if you get Palkia V-Star set up and you get a few of those going, they're just so big. Like 280 hit points for Entei Valiant with a very narrow bench is hard to knock out.
Yeah, these tachyon bits are going to do some work. Are going to have to do some work. Sorry, but both players are going to be looking for a kind of 2-2-2 prize-taking strategy. They're going to be looking to utilize their Pokemon as much as possible, taking big knockouts where possible.
I saw there in the hand a little flash of the Palkia V-Star.
Yep.
So going first, having the Palkia V in play, whilst also getting lots of energy into play and into the discard pile, will increase that early threat. You know, the Palkia V-Star is very similar to how the Entei, Suicune, and the Raikou attack. A lot of you might be very familiar with the Blizzard, Burning, and Lightning Rondo attacks,
correct,
which do 20 plus 20 for every bench Pokemon. Palkia is the same, but just with 60 plus 20, and so that little bit more reach on those big knockouts.
Yeah, fantastic. And here we see the first plays being made. Earthen Vessel, such a great addition from the Paradox Rift set. Of course, we've been seeing these cards flying out of the set into people's decks, of course, different strategies to be played. But the Earthen Vessel coming down, bringing 2 water energy into Luke Kirkham's hand, and the attachment there, so important for the Palkia once evolved. Of course, that 2 water energy requirement for attacking. But here we see Luke. Is there much in the hand here?
I see another Valiant, but you really want to be rolling. You want to start digging through that deck, get those Enteis going. I see a research there.
We see the research, yeah. Magnum Basin coming down. He's going to be wanting to get rid of that fire energy for that Magma Basin, and here we see a big 7 from Luke.
Just to remind you all at home that this matchup is Table 1. These are our 2 highest performing decks so far in Gdańsk. And I think in this particular matchup, neither of them were prepared for the other one, per se. I mean, maybe the Palkia deck was thinking Entei Valiant might go up in popularity after a finals performance at AIC. It's very favored towards the Palkia deck, not so much for the typing, but just because of the size and the hit points on the Palkia deck's Pokemon. There are some smaller targets, some 60 HP Pokemon, which Iron Valiant can play with. You've got the Celebrations Mew for 60 hit points and the Fettered in Misfortune Spiritomb, but unlikely to try and get those out here, Luke.
Yeah, really important that you mentioned there. Luke Kirkham is going to be looking to take advantage of the meta out there, right? So playing the Ice Rider Calyrex with that metal weakness, there aren't too many metal Pokemon running about, right? So, it's going to be really hard for players to be able to knock that Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX out. But here we see a good setup here from Luke Doran. The Squawk ability comes down, going to be able to utilize the Squawk and Seize ability, and with the Entei, maybe even a turn 1 attack here from that Entei V. But it does have it does have that water weakness, however, so it's going to be an easy 2 prizes for Luke to take next turn. Luke Kirkham, that is. And here we see the second nest ball come down, but of course going to be wanting to utilize the Battle VIP pass where possible, thinning that deck even further. And here we see 3 Iron Valiant come down, bringing his mates. Tachyon Bits, I'm sure, is going to be used here by Luke Doran. Going to be wanting to use as many Tachyon Bits abilities as possible in these first initial turns.
Now, the tough thing here for Luke Doran is has to go wide to get as many Valiant involved. The Tachyon Bits needs to be used to accumulate damage on the Palkia to try and put it in range. Where Luke Kirkham can go really narrow, knowing that the bench of Luke Doran's going to be wide, and then the Palkia and the Suicune and all these water types just have to reach lower numbers with the doubling of the weakness. So it does put it in favor in that sense. But it's not a matchup either of them will have, you know, thought about too much. I think maybe Luke Kirkham has had the advantage throughout the day of, I know how to win this matchup because I've got the deck that you don't understand.
Luke Kirkham is going to be wanting to make it really difficult for Luke Doran to be able to knock out the Palkia V-Stars, right? So limiting his board size is limiting the Entei attacking ability. So capability, sorry. So he's going to be wanting to utilize those Tachyon Bits, like I said earlier, as most efficiently as possible. Here we see the second attachment on the Entei, 20 damage on there with the Magma Basin. However, you know, limiting the fact that Luke Kirkham only needs to bench, you know, maybe 1 or 2 Pokemon, and with the Entei being unable to take any knockouts on the Palkia V-Star, the Palkia V-Star definitely has a lot of threat on the board. And here we see the boss's orders. 2 early prize cards for Luke Kirkham in this game.
Everything needed in that hand, the Palkia V-Star, the attachment, and the boss's orders. That deck is still so thick, there's so many more cards to go through. But when you've got everything you need in your hand, you don't need to rush. And having that Suicune available as your next attacker, and that Palkia V-Star pretty safe from getting knocked out next turn with such a narrow board. Luke Kirkham really going ahead here.
Yeah, this is scary, scary times for Luke Doran. Promotes that Entei V there. So it is going to be unable to use the Magma Basin, but with as many switch outs these Iron Valiant decks play, can't imagine it's going to be too much of a worry for him to get an attack off. Just reading the Suicune V, a card that we haven't seen much of in this meta. It was a big player in the meta, I guess, when it was first released.
Yeah.
Being paired up with the Ludicolo, if anybody remembers that one. Shout outs on socials if you remember that deck, if you played that one.
I mean, for a while, Suicune was by far the strongest of the 3 legendary beasts. You know, you had Suicune, Entei, Raikou. Raikou started to come into Lost Box variants, but ultimately Suicune had its own deck built around it.
Yeah.
And then it disappeared. Now Entei and Raikou have taken the scene, and I think it's really nice to see the Suicune coming back in. I've been playing a deck with Palkia and Suicune in recently. It's been great seeing other players read them and go, I haven't seen this card before used. And I'm thinking, wow, you haven't played the game for the last year or so, because back when Palkia and Suicune were at their best, they were the best decks in the format.
Such efficient attackers as well. All 3 of them only have the 2 energy requirements to be able to get off an attack. But, you know, the Entei V is being utilized here, I guess, with the Iron Valiant variants, only because it's, you know, it's 230 HP. It's the biggest HP of all 3 of them, and it's going to be able to, you know, give that capability of playing the Radiant Charizard, as we see here coming down for Luke Doran.
I mean,
you've got the Magma Basin coming down.
You've got the Magma Basin to power up the Entei. Yeah. You've got the Melanie to power up the Suicune, and you've got the electric generators to power up the Raikou. So each of them have got their way to get that second energy on, so you can attack with them straight away. But the big advantage of the Entei is water is such a uncommon type right now in the format. So these kinds of matchups are rare for Entei to come across, where weakness is a big factor. Yeah,
and here we see a big play from Luke Doran, being able to use the Charizard, Radiant Charizard, for a huge attack, 240 damage coming down, putting that... 230, yeah, sorry, with the double turbo energy, but
that's still a lot.
Yeah, putting that Palkia V-Star now in a vulnerable position to Tachyon Bits.
And a Yoga Loop.
Yeah, and a Yoga Loop as well, more importantly, yeah, of course. But Suicune's still down, you know, still posing a little bit of a threat. Here we see the Ultra Ball from Luke Kirkham. Going to be going through his deck here. He doesn't have much going on in that hand. Not many supporters. But however, the Luminion with that luminous sign is going to give him the ability to grab any support from deck. It's what he grabs here is going to be more important.
Yeah, having played the Luminion Palkia Suicune into the Entei before, one of your best attackers is actually the Luminion.
Yeah.
Using the Aqua Return and being able to get it out of the active spot, back into the deck so you can reuse for the supporters, but then also being able to put any Pokemon you want into the active so the Entei Valiant doesn't get the perfect target. It can be great for that. So in this situation, we might even see another Pokemon coming down as an easy push into the active as well.
Yeah, I absolutely love these ping pong style games here. 2 prizes? Okay, I'm going to take 2. I'm going to take 2 prizes. I'm going to take 2 as well. But here we see the switch coming down here as well. From that Irida, such an important card in this deck as well. You know, such good synchronization with the water Pokemon. Being able to grab a water Pokemon and a item card. Opting to get the switch out here, maybe retreating into the Suicune.
Okay.
And here we see another Palkia coming down. So he does have his 3 attackers on board. Understanding going through the deck that Ice Rider Calyrex isn't going to be an option. Here we see the first energy attachment of the turn, just debating maybe whether to use Star Portal.
I mean, the Radiant Charizard's a big worry here because that's such an efficient attacker towards the end game, and as a 1 prizer, it doesn't work into that 2-2-2 strategy we just alluded to. And so at this stage, I wonder whether they're just going to accept that knocking out the Radiant Charizard makes it harder to be brought back, and that the Entei then can't get the knockout, something like that. But having to knock out that 1 prizer does put it now potentially back in favor of Luke Doran. Yeah,
a difficult position to be in for Luke Kirkham. He really doesn't want to take 1 prize in this matchup. He wants to continue taking those big 2 prize knockouts, as we alluded to. The game plan really here for Luke Kirkham is to be able to take 2 prize, then a 2 prize, then a 2 prize for an easy game. But Luke Doran able to utilize, as you said, the Radiant Charizard as a single prize attacker. And here we see another Entei coming down. Not much of a decision to be made now, getting your attackers up and running. Luke Kirkham now being only on 3 prize cards. It doesn't really matter. Let's have a look at that hand. We do see Escape Rope. What options are available to him?
Yeah, what's interesting here is there's no way to recover Pokemon for Luke Doran. So once he discarded that Medicham earlier and the Radiant Charizard, they're now gone for the rest of the game. So Yoga Loop is not available, and the Radiant Charizard returning to play is not available. So Luke Kirkham hoping to build up another 2 large Pokemon for the opponent to deal with, and hopefully in that situation we'll be able to get back into the race for those prize trades.
I'm really intrigued as to how Luke Doran now approaches this matchup. With that Lumineon now on the bench, that is, you know, going to be quite easy to knock out compared to the Palkia V-Star and the Suicune. So it's going to be able to use the Tachyon bits, spread a bit of damage on that Lumineon, making it easy 2 prizes if he's able to. And here we see the Escape Rope into the Palkia V. Going to be starting to use that Tachyon bits. 20 damage on the Palkia V-Star, putting in on 270 damage, meaning only 1 more Tachyon bits will get the knockouts on that Palkia V-Star. And here we see it. Yeah, easy 2 prizes for Luke Doran.
And what's going to take off here? Another switch out, most likely. And this is the fascinating bit, because those Tachyon bits had to be used to knock out the Palkia V-Star. Now the 3 Pokemon that are available won't be able to be put into range through that Tachyon bits. Also, a Pokemon being removed from play reduces the power output of the Entei. So it does mean now that Luke Kirkham is likely to survive any attack here, but they might put it in range next turn for that same finishing off effect that we just saw.
Yeah, of course, and with that Palkia V still on the board, he is going to be able to evolve it, of course, next turn into the Palkia V-Star, being able to use that Star Portal. Just gets up and running so easily with that energy attachment ability. And
not much in the hand, though.
No, not much in the hand from Luke Kirkham. Here we see the 3rd Tachyon bits being used on that Palkia V. Here we see the fleet-footed. Sometimes gets you out of trouble. Of course, drawing that 1 card, but Luke Doran not really needing it too much. And here we see an attack on the Palkia V.
So that's 180 on there, so 40 hit points remaining for the Palkia V. There is a switch out to go into the fleet-footed, and it might be literally a fleet-footed here to try and get back into the game, get some stuff going. They do have the energy to be able to attack with the Suicune, so we'll be able to attack, but it's more about what happens after that. A vacuum, that's not ideal.
Yeah, not what he wants to see at all. Really wants to start seeing some supporter cards to be able to give his hand a bit of a refresh. Here we see the Lost Vacuum being used on the Magma Basin. Is going to be able to take the knockout on the Entei.
Oh, it's tough, isn't it, at this stage?
It is tough. It's tough. I can't see where this one is going to go.
That's the whole challenge with both these decks, is their end game can be a bit fragile. They can run out of momentum if they don't keep setting up the next attacker. And we saw the Magma Basin being taken out of play for Luke Doran, so now setting up the next Entei could be tricky. But to be able to get a knockout on the Palkia through the Tachyon Bits now without the evolution, that's going to put them within range of winning the game. It's
still difficult for Luke Doran, of course. He's definitely going to be eyeing up that Lumenion. However, the Palkia V is within range of Tachyon Bits. If he's able to see a couple of switch outs, he may be able to turn the tide of the game here. Magma Basin coming down, does have switch in hand. Or is that, that's a Lost Vacuum, sorry. Fleet-footed for one, switch cart.
Okay, and there's some stuff in the prizes that could help with switching even more as well. Let's see how it's going. Will they go into an Iron Valiant here? They've got enough switch outs to finish off the Palkia V on the bench. It's then what happens afterwards. Will they be able to find an escape rope to reset the active and maybe get that Luminion within range?
Tachyon Bits coming down, you'd imagine it would be on the Palkia V. But it is opting for the Suicune, so putting it to 190 here. Another Tachyon Bits on the Suicune.
I guess by knocking out the Palkia V, you reduce the Entei's attack output, so maybe just focusing on getting the energy out of play, removing the only attacker in play for Luke Kirkham.
This is a big Colress now, big 5 cards, does have Jet Energy, is going to be able to use that Entei.
And the Future Booster Energy Capsule allows for another retreat here.
Yeah, this is massive. So, unfortunately, with Colress, he is going to have to get rid of 2 of those cards put into the Lost Zone. Forest Seal Stone, of course, already used his V-Star for the game.
We've got the Magma Basin and the Jet Energy for that final movement, so we'll be able to get one more retreat here into another Tachyon Bits.
Here we see the Future Boost Energy Capsule, able to retreat into that Iron Valiant, and of course with a Jet Energy in hand is going to be able to put that Entei right back into the action. Magma Basin here, 20 damage with the attachment of the Jet Energy.
My goodness, this is going to be
putting it right into the fray here.
That's enough damage now on that Suicune from the Tachyon Bits to put it in range. 7 bench Pokemon plus the 20, that's 160. And that will be a knockout. And this could be the turn that dictates the final result of our first game here on the top table.
What a swing.
The Melanie off the top.
This is huge. If he's able to just find that Palkia V-Star, he will be able to take the game. Melanie attachment here.
Will he find it? Just the Palkia V-Star.
There's an Ultra Ball! He's got the Ultra Ball. Is going to be able to find that Palkia V-Star for the game.
What an end here with that Palkia on the edge of being knocked out through Tachyon Bits. A great decision by Luke Doran to knock out the only Pokemon with energy, but the Melanie off the top, not only accelerating energy into play, but allowing them to dig deeper and find that Palkia V-Star. It was literally a top deck for game.
Such an impressive game there from both players. Luke Doran really had to work to keep up with the momentum of the Palkia V-Star, but Luke Kirkham was able to clutch the victory just when times looked tough, was able to come away with the win.
What a fascinating back and forth here. And this is what Entei does as well. You look at the Entei Valiant deck and you think, you have to play differently around it, and a lot of the time that means not putting down those consistency cards that are free targets for the Valiants. Iron Valiant picks on Mew, it picks on things like Spiritomb, which can be used to disrupt the fleet-footed. So in that case, you then just end up having 1 Pokemon in play, 2 Pokemon in play, and just hope you find the energies you need to keep going throughout the game. And it was just by the skin of his teeth found that Melanie at the end.
I'm really impressed with this Palkia V-Star. Just when people thought, maybe it just doesn't do enough anymore in the format up against these new boys, these new guys on the block. But Luke Kirkham really bringing the spice and saying, guys, you're sleeping on this. You're sleeping on this one.
Who would have thought Palkia V-Star would be a 1-1 line in a Lost Box?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Well, we're getting treated here with our top table. This is table 1, the 2 best performing decks. Entei Iron Valiant versus Palkia V-Star. somewhat of a box, you could say.
Yeah.
All sorts of different cards in there, but 2 Entei in the prizes, thankfully 4 in the deck.
Yeah, it's going to make it still a little bit difficult for Luke Doran. He's going to have to maybe utilize some of these nest balls for Enteis, which he doesn't really want to do. He wants to be able to use these nest balls to try and get as many Iron Valiant down as possible. Here we see just the first deck check of the game. The Charizard is in the deck. Here we see opting for an Entei perhaps, or maybe even a Squawkabilly. Of course, going first is going to be able to use that Squawk and Seize ability without being able to use supporter cards. It is a fantastic ability to have to be able to refresh that hand.
Well, we'll see how the setup goes this time, of course. We saw last time Luke Doran going as wide as possible. Definitely needs to get as many Tachyon bits going as possible. On the other side, Luke Kirkham wants to try and stay narrow, but if the start isn't strong, might have to find a way to dig for it. So starting with the Greninja does help a bit of draw. You know, that concealed card's fantastic. It is an attacking option as well. Very rarely going to get used in this particular matchup. Maybe on the Charizard could be an option to leave a 1-prizer in the active. But of course, having that Palkia V-Star at 280 hit points, able to knock out anything on Luke Doran's side, is such a scary prospect.
Yeah, and this is such a good start from Luke Kirkham because the Radiant Greninja isn't really something Luke Doran wants to focus on, right? He wants to be starting to use those Tachyon bits on the big hitters, really, like you mentioned, the Palkia V-Stars. So this is actually a great start for Luke Kirkham.
Yeah, it would be a wasted prize card, potentially putting them in range of any disruption cards, which there isn't any in the deck, but you might be thinking, I don't want to take that out because it would make an Iono more effective, something like that. Yeah,
and like we said earlier, both players don't really want to be taking single prizes in this game. They want to be able to take these big knockouts where possible. Here we see the second future energy capsule on the Iron Valiant. Another nest ball coming down. Going to be able to get set up optimally here.
Not discarding the Medicham this time in the setup, so that is going to be an option available later on, which, let's be honest, in that last game, there was multiple times Pokemon within range of getting Yoga looped, and that could have really changed the course of the game. Yeah,
Luke Doran would have really loved to have seen the Yoga loop last game with that Palkia V being within range.
And the Palkia V-Star, the first one too.
And the first one too. And here we see the first Tachyon bits of the game onto the only option, the Radiant Greninja.
Not wasting a switch out.
Not wasting it, no, of course. And here we see Luke Kirkham starting his turn with trekking shoes.
What a card.
What a card. And I know Luke Kirkham, he loves a trekking shoes. And here we see concealed cards. A bit cold in that hand, I might say. There is a Chen Pao feeling a bit chilly.
Battle VIP
up here
pass.
In Gdansk, and a Battle VIP pass off the concealed cards. Big draws here for Luke Kirkham. Special K bringing the spice. And a Battle VIP pass coming down.
I mean, who would have thought that the way we'd see Chen Pao on the big stage today would be through a Palkia V-Star deck with I think it's just a 1 in there, just to help get some water energy with that Shivery Chill.
The Shivery Chill is such a good ability, right? You know, when you have such good options with energy manipulation with the Star Portal and the Palkia V. It's such a great option for this deck to have.
You got to think, with a Greninja in play and a Melanie in the hand, Greninja discards an energy, draw 2. Melanie, put an energy into play, draw 3. You're drawing 5 for just that 1 energy that you found out of your deck.
Yeah, let me tell you, it's a marriage made in heaven for sure. When you have
a
Melanie
in there as well.
You have the Earthen Vessel, you have the Melanie, you have the Irida. You know, it just makes sense. And here we see the escape rope coming down. I imagine, Luke going to be promoting that Iron Valiant. And here we see a fleet-footed 1 card is an energy, is going to be able to have the attachment for game, and the Melanie coming down, like you said, onto the Suicune, is going to be able to attack on their first turn.
Will they want to attack into the Iron Valiant? Is that valuable for them? Maybe able to finish it off with a Greninja later on.
Yeah, and I think that's 60, and with a full bench, that's going to be 160 damage. So like you said, is going to be able to put it in range of a Moonlight Shuriken in the later turns. And, you know, like you said, with the Star Portal, is going to be able to use that Moonlight Shuriken very efficiently with the 3 attachments from the ability. And here we see a Magma Basin coming down, getting rid of that Collapse Stadium. Collapse Stadium coming down, actually, really important. And
Yeah, you got to respect the 140 there as well.
Yeah.
This is with both these decks. You have to be very good with your 20 times table. You have to be good at ramping up damage, adding a little bit here and there, and really pushing the limits of how many bench Pokemon you put down and the right situations to do it.
Yeah, of course. And here we see a research being taken from the Forest Sealstone, the Star Alchemy. Such an important card in our meta. Definitely a favorite choice for a lot of our players. And here we see, what does he have? Not much going on, really. No, Ball Search does have that one switch, of course. And with the future Boost Energy Capsule, is going to have that free retreat on the Iron Valiant. So he's going to be able to use that Tachyon Bit. And where is this energy attachment going to go? Going to be on the Entei. Here, Magma Basin is still live. Yeah, it can get an attack off. Magma Basin is still live, and here we see it being used. Where's it going to go? It's going to go on the already damaged Entei. Quite important. So next turn, with a manual attachment on the other Entei, is going to be able to keep that full HP cost. And here we see the retreat into the Iron Valiant, like we thought. Tachyon Bits, where's it going? It's going to go on the Suicune, of course.
I wonder what they're thinking here, trying to set up maybe the Yoga Loop for a future turn.
And that's the beauty of the Iron Valiant. You don't quite know what their game plan is going to be. And here we see a big pass from Luke Doran. Okay. Is Luke Kirkham going to be able to punish it? Does have the boss in hand.
Oh my. And gets the energy in preparation for later, so that takes away those worrying Melanies that you have to find at the right time, just prepping up future attackers, and that's where passing a turn with the Iron Valiant might help you get it in range through those Tachyon Bits, but ultimately you're giving more time for the Palkia V-Star deck to set up. I
was going to hope to see Ice Rider Calyrex, but does opt to discard it. Looking through the deck, you can imagine it's going to be for that Palkia V-Star.
I mean, what do you think about this Ice Rider Calyrex include? That's a unique addition to the deck.
Certainly is. You know, like I said, I think he's trying to he's trying to take advantage of the fact that there's no metal Pokemon in the format, of course. You know, not much is going to be able to hit of a weakness. We did have the Zamazenta on stream yesterday, but probably didn't come up against most of those.
It does a good amount of damage as well, the Calyrex, Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX. Fantastic into a lot of the format right now. A lot of these basic EX Pokemon are in range of it. And as you mentioned, that water types with no lightning weakness are a very good position in the format right now. But there's that Boss's Orders you mentioned.
Orders, yeah. This is big plays here from Luke Kirkham. He's going to be able to go 2 prizes up here with the knockouts on that Entei V.
Okay, just working it out.
Just working out, yeah, of course, was knockout. Does have the weakness as well as a plus. And here we see Luke Kirkham going 2 prizes up. And one knockout is going to put him in a fantastic position. And with 4 prize cards left in this game for him, you can imagine the game plan really is coming to fruition for him.
The Battle of the Lukes is closing out here. And we mentioned beforehand, just because it's water versus fire doesn't necessarily mean it's in favor of the water, but you can see the way it's being played out. Luke Kirkham has way more options to be able to play around the wide bench, to have to set up more dangerous attackers that have to have a lot less needed to get the knockout, where Luke Doran is having to really reach for those knockouts, using as many Tachyon Bits as possible. Those hands are so much more important after a research. If you don't quite get the resources, you can often just miss out on the knockout you need.
And that Radiant Charizard in the hand does have double colorless as well. So it's going to be able to use a single prize card approach here. Does have the switch. Tachyon Bits coming out here. Where's he going to be putting it? I would imagine it would probably be on the Palkia V-Star,
Putting that in range of the Radiant Charizard?
Just softening that up. I don't think he's obviously used Colress, so isn't going to be able to gust it up for a big knockout. However, he's going to be able to utilize a single prize attacker, like we said.
MVP of this matchup, that Charizard.
Yeah, if Luke Kirkham doesn't have a good enough response to this. However, I think Kirkham can take a 3-prize swing next turn if he wants to with the Moonlight Shuriken, right?
Yeah, we mentioned at the beginning that 140 damage on the Iron Valiant puts it in perfect range. Oh, but the switch card. perfectly timed, as we were just speaking about it.
Yeah.
That now takes away that three prize
Yeah, it takes
turn.
away that game plan for sure. And here we see Palkia V-Star being a victim of that Tachyon Bits. And here we see the attachment on the Radiant Charizard.
The question is, do you still just attack with the Greninja, even if you don't get the benefit of knocking out the Valiant, just so you then left a one prizer in the active, maybe?
Taking two prizes with a single prizer isn't a terrible shout in this matchup, but is going to be wanting to use the most efficient approach, which, you know, I'm unsure whether using the Moonlight Shuriken is, but who knows what's in the mind of Luke Kirkham.
I mean, it's made him think. You can tell
yeah,
he's gone,
it's made it think for sure.
My plan has changed.
Yeah, promoting the Palkia V-Star. Let's see what's going on in our hand. Does have Irida as an option this turn. Does slap it down.
The hands have been so scrappy for the Palkia V-Star, really just plucking at those supporters. There is 4 Irida and 4 Melanie in there, just to be able to really tutor everything you need out of the deck and get those energies in play when you need it. But sometimes if you miss that, it can really change the pace of the deck.
Yeah, really wants to be able to get a game-winning situation down here, so having a second attacker on board like the Palkia V is going to be something that he'll like to do here. So just use the Earthen Vessel, grab 2 more water energy out of that deck, does make that concealed cards that much better. Does of course have the manual attachment as well. Here we see the concealed cards.
A bit more draw. We know how powerful that Radiant Greninja is. Appearing in decks like Gardevoir that don't even have water energy to use it, that draw is so important, and to have the benefit of being able to power it up with that Star Portal from the Palkia V-Star, so versatile within the water-type decks. So we'll see if it does get used here, but I do think they're just going to go for the approach of Palkia V-Star is too big for your deck. Can you take out 2 of them? As that knockout comes through, not going to affect the prize race too much, but it takes away the most threatening attacker.
It still made it really awkward for Luke Kirkham, right? Because now it still puts him in a position where he still needs 2 turns of attacking to be able to take game. Isn't going to be able to take multiple prizes in 1 turn. Here we see the draw does have boss in hand, but like we said, for Luke Kirkham, he wants to really put himself in a position where he can't lose this game, right? So he's going to want to maybe utilize that Star Portal for next game, get an energy attached, get an attack off, take another 2 prizes, and here we see another Colress's Experiment. But important to mention as well, no disruption in this Iron Valiant deck. No Iona, no Roxanne, no Judge, nothing like that. So Luke Kirkham's going to be able to keep that hand throughout the game.
Both sides, no disruption. This is very much a does my game plan work matchup.
Yeah.
The main way of disrupting really is taking out and gusting the right targets, using those cross switches or using that boss's orders to try and target the most threatening card on board. In this situation, that Palkia V-Star is going to be really hard to knock out. The Radiant Charizard is really the best option to reach the larger numbers here with the narrow benches on both sides.
Yeah, with no disruption in either player's decks, this really turns into quite a slogfest. It really turns into who is able to utilize their attacks more, who's going to be able to utilize their options better than the other. And here we see another Tachyon Bits being used on the Palkia V-Star, rendering that 220 HP, and it's still so difficult for Luke Doran to be able to knock this out. And here we see a Nest Ball. Imagine it's going to be getting another, it's actually Yoga Loop, I think, on the front of that deck.
Everything's out of range.
Yeah, everything's out of range from the Yoga Loop. Such an important addition, of course, in this deck, coupled up with the Tachyon Bits and in the Evolution format. Being able to use that Yoga Loop on these low HP Pokemon in the format definitely is the game plan for this deck.
I'm sure you guys in chat are trying to work out the maths live like we are. Those bench Pokemon so important, they're damage multipliers every time. So if Luke Doran fills out his bench with 5 and there's 2 on the other side, that will be doing 160, right?
Yeah.
And then if he only gets 4 bench Pokemon down, it's going to be doing 140, which really leaves so much HP on the Palkia V-Star. If they can get it as close to knockout as possible, then that's where the Yoga Loop next turn could be a potential option. And so this is the thought process at this stage. Got to try and get as much damage, allow that Metachan to be an effective target. So you can see that here, 160 will put that Palkia with 60 hit points remaining, so in range of a Yoga Loop.
In the range of a Yoga Loop, but it's the game plan in the future turns, right? So it's how does he take this game? That's the question. So he's going to be able to put damage on this Palkia V-Star, like you said, putting it within range of the Yoga Loop, but it's the turn after. You know, if Luke Kirkham is able to evolve this Palkia V-Star, how does he then deal with that threat?
Yeah, that Palkia V on the bench, currently still out of range as well, you know. 220 is still a lot of damage to do when you're having to use all of those switch outs for the Palkia V-Star.
Yeah.
If it does evolve, I think at that stage, it's pretty much done for Luke Doran.
Yeah, a few big turns for Luke Doran for sure. Here we see the damage coming down on that Palkia V-Star, like you said, putting it within range of a Yoga Loop maybe for next turn. 230 damage, putting it on 50.
There it is. The Palkia V-Star ready to go down.
Yeah, and here we see Luke's hand. We see an escape rope. We see Ultra Ball. Would have loved to have seen maybe a Gust, but is able, of course, to take an easy 2 prizes on the NTV, of course.
And at that point, you've got cross switches as an option through an Irida, so if you're able to find one of those maybe off of a draw, then you could then think about getting the second one.
Yeah, of course, is an option. Maybe he's able to draw it off the Melanie, maybe, if he's lucky enough.
I mean, you'll be fine just taking out the active as well.
Yeah, of course, yeah. A lot of options for Luke Kirkham. Does want to maybe take out the threat of the Medicham or just take out these 2 prizes. No Jirachi in the deck, so Yoga Loop is going to be an option always for Luke Doran for next turn. And here we say just deliberating the Irida. I believe that's his only supporter in the hand.
Yeah, I think so.
So much bling in that deck. Unsure what I'm looking at. But here we see just a deck check here, maybe opting for that cross switcher. Conceal cards is still active. Looking to get the Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX.
Just to thin it, I guess,
Just
right?
to thin, yeah, for sure. But opting for the Earthen Vessel.
Might just be looking to draw naturally into the cross switches. I mean, a concealed card for 2 cross switches. We've seen crazier things.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, there's another Irida for next turn as well in there.
Yeah, there's the Earthen Vessel coming down. 2 more energy out of the deck. Thinning is winning. And it's going to put that concealed cards in a more effective spot for sure.
As we've mentioned before, neither player got disruption, so the thinning here is not about protecting yourself from an Iona or a Roxanne or something like that. It's just to try and increase the odds of those concealed cards, or the Melanies, any of the kind of draw that we see in the deck. But imagine if they'd had access to that Iron Valiant turn. It would have been a no-brainer at that point, and they'd be in such a strong position, whereas that well-timed switch card did so well. And there we go, there's the knockout.
There's the knockouts. Luke now only 1 prize away from taking this game and putting himself at an 11-1-1 record in this regional championships.
Luke Doran now, a lot to do.
A lot to do here. This is a big, big turn for Luke Doran. Here we see the Colress coming down. 5 big cards, Mike.
Lots of switch outs there.
A lot of switch outs as well. Bal VIP pass, you'd imagine, being slammed into that lost zone.
Just doing it a bit neater.
Yeah.
And the escape rope as well.
And the escape rope, interesting.
So comfortable with the amount of switch outs in hand, keeping the research maybe for the repeat turn after the Yoga Loop to help that dig even deeper. So we see the switch cart to start things off.
Switch cart healing that 30 damage, and Tachyon bits now being used. Going to be on that Palkia V-Star.
Oh, this is the power of the Entei Iron Valiant list. You guys have wanted to see this all day. We're going to be seeing a Yoga Loop here. The second Tachyon bits with the retreat. The switch in hand to set up the Yoga Loop. And then the question is, what happened next? What happens next is the big thing, Mike.
It's whether he can be able to take the knockout on that Palkia V-Star on the bench for game. And here we see a Yoga Loop play coming out. I don't believe you've seen one yet on stream.
That Palkia V-Star will earn Luke Doran another turn, a chance to steal the victory. But with the Palkia V-Star on the bench, so healthy, it's going to be really challenging at this stage to get another knockout. But we see the Yoga Loop, 2 prizes taken. Luke Doran, you get another go.
Yeah, you get another go for sure. Luke Kirkham just checking his odds here. What's going on? How much gust does he have left? as an option to him, promoting that Radiant Greninja. Definitely doesn't want to promote the Palkia V-Star, wants to make it as difficult as possible for Luke Doran, but playing 4 Escape Rope.
Oh, just not much deck left. Worried about that research and decking himself out. And you see so many escape ropes
3
in
Escape
hand there.
Rope.
Bounce it back and forth.
Yeah, this is definitely a dance of the Iron Valiants for sure. Here we see promoting the Iron Valiant, you would have thought. Here we see the first Tachyon Bits.
Is he just going to try and have a few turns and see if he can whittle down that Palkia V-Star and put it into range?
Another Escape Rope, playing musical chairs here in the active zone.
I think it's just going to have to be a pass here. If you put that Entei into the active, it's just going to be a free knockout for the Palkia V-Star. So just has to try and whittle it down, turn after turn, put it in range, see if a mistake comes out maybe from Luke Kirkham. You never know at this last stage. Might need to use a Luminion or something, I don't know.
Yeah, interesting to see how this plays out. And just with a pass, does Luke Kirkham have the gust to be able to take this game? He does have Escape Rope.
Oh, he's going to start playing down. Reach for that cross switcher. Does have an Escape Rope.
Does have Escape Rope.
But if he puts a lot of bench Pokemon down, the Escape Rope might put it in range. So perhaps going for that outright here.
Here we see opting for the Celebrations Mew, perhaps.
Or maybe just knowing that the cross switch is almost guaranteed with the Mew if he puts it into the active.
6120.
So that's 7 Pokemon, 8 Pokemon, 220 damage now. So with the Escape Rope, I think that puts everything in range.
Opting to promote the Palkia V-Star, just checking how
I believe he just retreated without removing the energy off of the Greninja, right? Oh, but he's just doing it. He's just attacking into the active, and that's going to be game there.
That's game. Oh.
With the amount of bench Pokemon
Knockout
down, Palkia
on the Iron Valiant, and Luke Kirkham able to take game 2, putting himself in a fantastic position in this tournament. 11-1-1, no easy feat.
What an amazing deck as well. Playing the Palkia V-Star with that Ice Rider Calyrex. He's been playing against Miraidons all tournament long and finishing them all off with the Ice Rider Calyrex. A genius inclusion. And the water deck so powerful with Irida and Melanie available, and that Shenpao Shivery Chill, utilizing that energy as your draw engine, but also having those efficient attackers. What an amazing deck.
What a story as well. You know, bringing a deck that nobody, even thought of. Palkia V-Star with the Ice Rider Calyrex. I'm really interested to see how far he takes this.
Yeah, well, I mean, in a very good position to be making that top 8 now. That was the number 1 table for anyone who's wondering. We had Entei Valiant versus Palkia V-Star on our top table here in Gdańsk, and that's been the beauty of this tournament. We've got that new set. The European players have brought along all of their spicy lists. We've seen Tord with his incredible Lost Box, and then now we've seen these little inclusions of cards across all the other decks we're familiar with. So we'll be interested to see which ones make it through to that top 8 today. Yeah,
and as we go through the day, it's a story of whether players had gone through the tried and tested, bringing the Mew or bringing the Miraidon. But, we see these players, Luke Kirkham, Tord, as we've also seen on stream, bringing the spice and just going, you know what? I think this can beat the majority of the meta, and I'm going to take full advantage. I had a very big feeling that someone was going to bring a deck we hadn't seen before here. It's very typical in Europe. We saw in Lille the Bennett list from Mateusz. We've seen Palkia, Vikavolt in the past from the Polish players. So I backed someone to come up with something creative. With so many options available after Paradox Rift's entrance into the format, there's been so many options. The Earthen Vessel seems to be that real MVP that's increased the effectiveness of those water-type decks. Yeah, for sure. Like we mentioned, there's so much energy manipulation, in the water decks. We've got Shivery Chill. We've got the Star Portal from Palkia. We've got Melanie. Concealed cards. We've got concealed cards.